The champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching my husband kiss another woman under the crystal chandelier. Not a peck, not an accidental brush of lips at a holiday party. A full, deliberate, possessive kiss that said mine in a language everyone understood. His hand cupped her face the way he used to cup mine, back when I still believed the word forever meant something. The annual Grayson Industries Charity Gala. 200 people, colleagues, clients, investors, the city's elite packed into the historic Belmont Hotel ballroom, all of them now turning to look at what I was looking at. The murmur started like distant thunder, rolling through the crowd in waves. I didn't move. My name is Victoria Nash, and I'd known about Jordan's affair for exactly 4 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days, but nobody else knew that I knew. And that made all the difference. Victoria, my assistant Claire appeared at my elbow, her face pale. Do you want me to? Get me another drink, I said quietly, handing her my empty glass. My voice didn't shake. My hand didn't tremble. I'd practiced this moment in my mirror for weeks, knowing it would come eventually. Knowing Jordan would get careless, confident, stupid. Claire hesitated, her eyes darting between me and the scene unfolding 30 feet away. Marcus had finally noticed the silence, the stares. He pulled back from the woman Amber. Her name is Amber Fletcher, and his eyes found mine across the room. For one beautiful second, I saw fear flicker across his face. The drink, Claire, I repeated, softer this time. She nodded and disappeared into the crowd. I turned away from my husband and his mistress. Turned my back on the whispers, the pitying looks, the smartphone cameras now probably uploading to social media. I walked, didn't run, didn't stumble toward the balcony doors. My heels clicked against marble with a steady rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Outside, the November air bit at my bare shoulders. The city stretched below, lights glittering like scattered diamonds. I gripped the stone railing and allowed myself 5 seconds. 5 seconds to feel the rage, the humiliation, the grief for something that had died months ago. Then I smiled. Because Jordan had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and he had no idea. The kiss everyone just witnessed? It would be Exhibit A. The location? Even better, this was a work event, and Jordan was technically on company time, representing Grayson Industries, where I, coincidentally, was Senior Vice President of Operations. Where Jordan was a mid-level consultant who'd gotten his position through my recommendation 6 years ago. Where Amber Fletcher was a junior analyst in the marketing department. Some view, isn't it? I didn't turn at the voice. I recognized it. Thomas Grayson, CEO and owner of the company. 72 years old, sharp as broken glass, and the closest thing I had to a mentor. Beautiful, I agreed, keeping my eyes on the skyline. That was quite a scene in there. He moved to stand beside me, his cologne expensive and subtle. Your husband seems to have forgotten himself. He's good at that. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then, how long have you known? Does it matter? It does if you're planning what I think you're planning. Now, I did turn to look at him. His weathered face was unreadable in the shadows, but his eyes held something that looked like approval. I don't know what you mean, I said carefully. Victoria, he sighed, pulling out a silver cigarette case I'd never seen him use before. I've watched you for 8 years. Watched you turn a failing operations department into the most profitable division in this company. Watched you negotiate contracts that made grown men weep. You think I don't recognize strategy when I see it? He didn't light the cigarette, just rolled it between his fingers. Jordan requested a transfer to the Singapore office last month, put in the paperwork himself, said it was for Regent. My breath caught. I hadn't known that. I denied it, Thomas continued. Seemed odd, him wanting to go international right when we're about to announce the biggest merger in company history. The merger you've been architecting for 2 years. The pieces clicked into place. Jordan wanted to run, take Amber and disappear to another continent before he knows, I whispered. Apparently not well enough, given tonight's performance. Thomas finally lit the cigarette, took a drag, blew smoke into the cold air. The board meeting is still scheduled for Monday? Yes. And your bonus? It posted to your account this morning? It did, $65,000. My reward for the merger deal, for the countless late nights, for carrying the weight of an entire department. Money I'd earned through blood, sweat, and pure competence. Money Jordan had already spent. Then, I suggest you enjoy the rest of your evening, Thomas said, stubbing out the cigarette after only 2 drags. Monday's going to be very interesting. He walked away, leaving me alone with the city and my thoughts. Behind me, Through the glass doors, I could see the party continuing. Jordan and Amber had vanished, probably to some hotel room he'd booked with my credit card. Let them have their night. Let them believe they'd gotten away with it. I pulled my phone from my clutch. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages. I ignored them all and opened my email instead. The message I drafted weeks ago sat in my outbox, waiting. My finger hovered over the send button. Not yet, Monday. Everything had to happen on Monday. I slipped the phone back into my clutch and returned to the party. Claire met me at the door with a fresh champagne flute and a question in her eyes. I'm fine, I told her, and I was. For the first time in 4 months, I felt perfectly, crystallinely fine. Because the game was almost over and I'd been playing chess while Jordan was playing checkers. The morning after the gala, I woke alone in my bed. Our bed. The king-sized mattress we'd picked out together 7 years ago, back when I still thought marriage meant partnership. The sheets on Jordan's side were cold, undisturbed. He hadn't come home. I didn't call him. Didn't text. Didn't check the location app he didn't know I'd installed on his phone 3 months ago. I already knew where he was, the Riverside Suites, room 412, the same room he'd been booking every Friday night since July. Instead, I got up and made coffee. Stood in our kitchen, my kitchen, really, since I'd bought this house with my inheritance before we were married, and watched the sun rise through the bay windows. Saturday morning light painted everything gold, made the marble countertops glow, caught the dust motes drifting through air that felt too still, too quiet. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Diane. Everyone's talking about last night. Are you okay? Do you need me to come over? I typed back, I'm fine, just need some space to think. Another buzz. My mother this time. Victoria Marie Nash, call me immediately. That man has humiliated you for the last time. I silenced my phone. The truth was, I'd been humiliated for months. The gala just made it public. The private humiliation had started in June when I'd found the hotel receipt in Jordan's jacket pocket, the Riverside Suites, 2 nights, premium suite, charged to our joint account. I'd confronted him. He'd said it was a work trip, that he'd had to entertain a client, that I was being paranoid. He'd turned it around on me somehow, made me feel guilty for questioning him, made me apologize for not trusting him. That's what narcissists do. They gaslight you until you doubt your own reality. But then I'd found the second receipt. And the third, always the same hotel, always on Fridays, always the same room number. So I'd stopped apologizing and started documenting. I carried my coffee to the home office, my office, really, since Jordan never worked from home, and unlocked the filing cabinet I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Inside were 4 manila folders, each one labeled with a month. June, July, August, September. October's folder was still on my desk, growing thicker by the day. I opened June's folder first. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, phone records. I'd hired a private investigator in July, a woman named Patricia Chen. No, wait, I promised I wouldn't use that name, Patricia Martinez. She'd given me everything. Photos of Jordan and Amber entering the hotel, photos of them at restaurants I'd never been to, photos of them shopping together at stores I'd never heard of, all paid for with our joint credit card. The card that I deposited my paychecks into, that paid our mortgage, our utilities, our life. The photos were damning, but they weren't the worst part. The worst part was the bank statements. Jordan had been transferring money, small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there, amounts I might not notice in the chaos of monthly expenses, but they added up. Over 4 months, he'd moved nearly $20,000 from our joint account into a personal account he'd opened, without telling me. $20,000 of my money. Money I'd earned while he coasted through a job I'd gotten him. But that wasn't what broke me. What broke me was finding out what he'd planned to do with my bonus. I'd overheard him on the phone 3 weeks ago. I'd come home early from a site visit, and he'd been in the garage, pacing, talking in that low, urgent voice people use when they don't want to be heard. I told you, baby, it's coming next month. $65,000. Enough for the down payment, just like we talked about. The condo in Marina Bay is perfect. 2 bedrooms, waterfront view. We can move in by Christmas. I'd frozen in the doorway, hidden by shadows. I know she'll notice eventually, but by then we'll be gone. Singapore, remember? I put in for the transfer. Once we're there, she can't touch us. He'd laughed. Actually laughed. Yeah, she'll be pissed. But what's she gonna do? She's too proud to make a scene. Too worried about her precious reputation. She'll just bury herself in work like always, and we'll be living our best life in Southeast Asia. That's when I'd stopped feeling sad and started feeling dangerous. Now, sitting in my office with the Saturday morning sun streaming through the windows, I pulled out the final document in October's folder. A property listing for a luxury condo in Marina Bay, Singapore. 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the harbor. Listed price, $1.2 million. Down payment required, $65,000. My bonus. Exactly. Jordan had already contacted a realtor, already filled out the preliminary paperwork, already started planning his new life with Amber, funded entirely by my career, my work, my success. I'd found all of this 3 weeks ago, and I'd spent every day since then planning. Not revenge. Revenge was too small a word, too impulsive. This was justice. Calculated, precise, irreversible justice. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Jordan. Staying at a friend's place tonight. Need some space to think about us. I almost laughed. Us. As if there was still an us. As if he hadn't destroyed that months ago. I didn't respond. Let him think I was devastated, crying, falling apart. Let him think he still had the upper hand. I had work to do. Monday morning arrived cold and sharp. I dressed carefully, navy Armani suit, white silk blouse, pearl earrings my grandmother had left me, professional armor, war paint. I pulled my dark hair back into a sleek bun, applied minimal makeup, checked myself in the mirror. I looked competent, composed, unshakable, perfect. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 o'clock. I arrived at Grayson Industries at 7:30, before most people, before the gossip could start, before I had to face the pitying looks and whispered conversations. My office was on the 14th floor. Corner window, view of the harbor. I'd earned this office. Earned every square foot of it. Claire was already at her desk outside my door, 2 coffees waiting. She looked exhausted, worried. "Good morning," I said, taking one of the cups. "Thank you for this. Victoria, if you need anything, I need you to make sure the conference room is set up exactly as I specified. Projector, handouts, water for everyone. And I need you to confirm that everyone on the list I gave you last week will be in attendance." She blinked. "The board meeting is just the board. You want other people there? It's not just a board meeting anymore." I unlocked my office door. Trust me, everything needs to be perfect. Inside my office, I booted up my computer and opened the presentation I'd been building for 2 weeks. 37 slides. Financial reports, email correspondence, documented timelines. Everything I needed to dismantle Jordan's life, piece by careful piece. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas Grayson. "Ready?" I typed back, "Born ready." At 8:45, I gathered my materials and headed to the conference room. The building had woken up around me, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the hum of a Monday morning. People stared as I passed. Some looked away quickly. Others offered sad smiles. Everyone had heard about the gala by now. The video had probably made the rounds on social media all weekend. Let them stare, let them whisper. By lunchtime, they'd have something else to talk about. The conference room was exactly as I'd requested. Long mahogany table, leather chairs for 20. The board was already gathering 10 men and 3 women, all of them powerful, all of them watching me with varying degrees of sympathy and curiosity. Thomas sat at the head of the table. He nodded at me once, expression neutral. And there, sitting halfway down the table in a section usually reserved for department heads, was Jordan. He looked terrible. Exhausted, unshaven, rumpled suit. He'd probably just left Amber's apartment and driven straight here. His eyes met mine, and I saw the calculation happening behind them. Should he apologize? Explain? Pretend nothing happened? I gave him nothing. No anger, no tears, no acknowledgement. I simply walked to the front of the room, connected my laptop to the projector, and waited. At exactly 9 o'clock, Thomas called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for being here," he began. "As you know, we're on the verge of finalizing our merger with Pacific Rim Technologies. This is the largest deal in company history, valued at $2.8 billion. Victoria Nash, our Senior VP of Operations, has been leading the negotiation team, and she's here to give us a final status update before we sign." Polite applause. Jordan didn't clap. He was staring at me, and I could see the question forming. Why was I acting so normal? Why wasn't I falling apart? "Thank you, Thomas," I said, my voice steady. "Before we discuss the merger, I need to address some internal matters that have recently come to my attention." Matters that directly impact this company's reputation and liability. The room shifted. Confused glances. Thomas leaned back in his chair, waiting. I clicked to the first slide. It showed the Grayson Industries Code of Conduct, specifically Section 4.2. Romantic relationships between employees must be disclosed to human resources and cannot involve direct reporting relationships or conflicts of interest. As many of you know, I continued, my husband Jordan Nash has been employed by this company for 6 years as a senior consultant in the business development department. What you may not know is that for the past 4 months, Jordan has been conducting an affair with Amber Fletcher, a junior analyst in marketing. Jordan went white. Victoria, this isn't the place. This is exactly the place, I said, my voice still calm, still professional, because their relationship violates company policy in multiple ways. Miss Fletcher reports to the marketing director, who reports to the VP of marketing, who works directly with business development on campaign strategies. Jordan has been involved in selecting vendors and approving budgets that directly benefit Miss Fletcher's projects. I clicked to the next slide. Emails between Jordan and the marketing director recommending Amber for a promotion. Emails between Jordan and a vendor discussing a contract that would fund Amber's department's biggest campaign. This represents a conflict of interest, I continued. But it gets worse. Next slide. The hotel receipts. All of them charged to the corporate card Jordan had been issued for client entertainment. Jordan has been using company funds to conduct this affair, the Riverside Suites, every Friday night for 4 months, 16 weeks. 16 fraudulent expense reports totaling approximately $12,000 in company money. The room erupted, board members leaning forward exclaiming, Thomas raising his hand for silence. Jordan was standing now, his face red. Those were legitimate business expenses. I was entertaining clients. Which clients? I clicked again. Phone records. Because according to your call logs, you only contacted one person during those hotel stays. Amber Fletcher. Personal calls, personal texts. No clients, no business. You had no right to access my phone records. Actually, I did. I turned to face him fully now, and I let him see it, the cold, controlled fury I'd been hiding for months. Those records are company property. As senior VP, I have every right to audit expenses and investigate potential fraud, which is exactly what I've been doing. I clicked through more slides. The money transfers from our joint account to his personal account, the property listing in Singapore, the transfer request he'd submitted. Jordan planned to leave the company and the country immediately after I received my performance bonus last Friday. He planned to use my bonus, money I earned, to fund a new life in Singapore with Miss Fletcher. He planned to steal from me personally while simultaneously defrauding this company. The silence in the room was absolute. Thomas stood. Jordan Nash, you're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal items under supervision. Any attempt to access company systems or files will result in criminal charges. Jordan was shaking. You can't do this. I'll sue. You'll do nothing, I said quietly. Because if you fight this, I'll file criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. I have 4 months of documentation. Every receipt, every transfer, every lie. The district attorney is a personal friend of Thomas's. Do you really want to test me? He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd only ever seen the version of me he wanted to see, the accommodating wife, the trusting partner. The woman too proud to fight back. Who are you? He whispered. I'm the woman you underestimated, I replied. Now get out of my meeting. Security appeared at the door. Jordan looked around the room one last time, searching for sympathy, for allies. He found none. The board members looked disgusted, angry, betrayed. They'd trusted him because they trusted me, and he'd made them all look foolish. They escorted him out. The door closed. I turned back to the board. Now, shall we discuss the merger? The meeting lasted another hour. We reviewed projections, discussed integration timelines, voted to proceed with the Pacific Rim deal. The board approved everything unanimously, but I barely heard any of it. My heart was pounding, adrenaline singing through my veins. I'd done it. Actually done it. When Thomas finally adjourned the meeting, several board members approached me. Handshakes, words of support, assurances that I'd done the right thing. One of the women, Patricia Morrison, no, I can't use that name either. One of the women, Patricia Holmes, a board member who'd founded her own tech company before selling it for hundreds of millions, pulled me aside. That took guts, she said, her voice low. Most women would have handled this privately, tried to protect his reputation along with their own. You went scorched earth. He deserved it. He absolutely did. She squeezed my arm. But be prepared. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. He's going to try to spin this, make himself the victim. Claim you destroyed his career out of spite. Let him try. I'd already thought of that. Already prepared for it. Good. Patricia smiled, sharp and approving. You remind me of myself 20 years ago. Don't let this break you. Use it. Show these men exactly what happens when they underestimate us. She left, and I was alone with Thomas. He gathered his papers slowly, deliberately, giving me space to breathe. How do you feel? He asked finally. Numb. Relieved, terrified. I sat down in one of the leather chairs. My legs felt shaky now that the adrenaline was fading. Did I just destroy my career? What? No. Thomas looked genuinely surprised. Victoria, you protected this company from a lawsuit. If Jordan's fraud had come out during the merger negotiations, Pacific Rim could have walked away. You prevented a disaster. By publicly humiliating my husband? By exposing a thief and a liar? He sat across from me. You showed leadership. Integrity. The board respects that. Hell, I respect that. And I've been doing this for 40 years. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that I hadn't just torpedoed everything I'd built, but I'd seen how the corporate world worked. Women who made waves, who caused scenes, who didn't play nice, they got labeled difficult, emotional, vindictive. What about Amber Fletcher? I asked. HR is handling it. She'll be terminated by end of day. Different grounds the relationship itself isn't fileable, but she falsified expense reports too. Jordan would submit his fraudulent reports, and she'd approve them through her departmental access. Conspiracy to defraud. I nodded. I'd found that connection last week, buried in the digital paper trail. Amber hadn't just been Jordan's mistress. She'd been his accomplice. Go home? Thomas said gently. Take the rest of the day. The merger team can handle things. You need to process this. He was right, but going home meant facing the empty house. The bed I'd slept in alone. The evidence of my marriage's failure. I think I'll work from my office instead, I said. Keep busy. Thomas studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Suit yourself. But Victoria? Lock your door. Don't answer calls from numbers you don't recognize. Jordan is going to react, and it won't be pretty. He left, and I walked back to my office in a daze. The 14th floor was buzzing, now word had spread. I could feel eyes following me, hear the whispers. But I kept my head high, my expression neutral. I was Victoria Nash, Senior VP of Operations, and I'd just proven I was nobody's victim. Claire was waiting at her desk, looking worried. Are you okay? I'm fine. Hold my calls. All of them. If Jordan contacts you, send him straight to voicemail. Already done. She handed me a folder. Also, these came for you. Delivered this morning. Divorce papers. My attorney, Helen Martinez, had filed them first thing Monday morning as I'd instructed. She'd included everything we'd discussed, division of assets, requests for full documentation of all accounts, restraining order preventing Jordan from accessing our joint finances. I'd get the house, the car I'd bought, my retirement accounts, everything I'd brought into the marriage plus half of anything we'd accumulated together. Jordan would get his personal belongings and a very expensive lawyer's bill. Perfect, I said, taking the folder. Can you scan these and email them to me? I need digital copies. Inside my office, I finally allowed myself to sit down, to breathe, to feel. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my desk, willing them to steady. My phone buzzed. Then again, and again. Text messages flooding in. Jordan, how could you do this to me? Jordan, you destroyed my career, my reputation, everything. Jordan, this is revenge, pure and simple. You're a vindictive, spiteful woman. Jordan, I loved you. I made a mistake, and you destroyed me. I blocked his number. Another text, this one from a number I didn't recognize. You're going to regret this. You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. Amber, had to be. I blocked that number too. Then I opened my email and sent the message I'd been holding onto since Friday night, the one I'd drafted weeks ago, addressed to Jordan's parents, his siblings, our mutual friends, the people who'd taken his side, who'd believed his lies, who'd probably hear his version of events and think I was the villain. The subject line read, "The truth about Jordan and me." The body was simple, factual, devoid of emotion. "Many of you will hear about what happened today. Jordan will likely tell you I destroyed his career out of spite. I'm writing to provide the facts. For 4 months, Jordan conducted an affair with a coworker. He used our joint finances to fund this relationship. He used company money to pay for hotel rooms. He planned to steal my performance bonus and move to Singapore without telling me. I documented everything. I have receipts, bank statements, phone records, and witness testimony. When I discovered the extent of his deception, I reported it to my company's board of directors. They terminated him for fraud and policy violations. I am filing for divorce. I ask that you respect my privacy during this time. I will not be discussing this further. Victoria, I attached a single PDF, the bank statements, showing the transfers from our joint account. Proof I wasn't lying, wasn't exaggerating, wasn't the villain in this story. Then I hit send. My phone started ringing immediately. I ignored it, opened my laptop instead, and pulled up the presentation materials for the Pacific Rim merger. Work. I needed to work. Needed to focus on something I could control, something that made sense. But I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept replaying the moment Jordan's face had gone white, when he'd realized I'd outplayed him. The moment he'd understood that I wasn't the woman he thought I was. "I'm the woman you underestimated," the words echoed in my head. They felt good, powerful, true, but underneath the power was something else. Grief. Not for Jordan, I was done mourning him. Grief for the marriage I'd thought I had, the partnership I'd believed in, the future I'd planned. All of it was gone now. Burned away in a conference room on a Monday morning. I put my head down on my desk and, for the first time in 4 months, I let myself cry. I cried for exactly 10 minutes. Then I washed my face in my private bathroom, reapplied my makeup, and got back to work. That was the thing about being a woman in corporate America. You didn't get the luxury of falling apart. You fell apart in private, in 10-minute increments, and then you pulled yourself together and kept moving. By noon, the story had spread through the entire company. I could track its progress through the building by the messages pinging into my inbox, colleagues expressing support, asking if I needed anything, sharing their own stories of betrayal and survival. Women mostly. They understood. One message stood out. From Harrison Cole, the VP of Marketing, Amber's boss's boss. We'd worked together on several campaigns, respected each other's work. Victoria, I wanted to personally apologize. I had no idea what Amber was involved in. If I'd known she was compromising your marriage and our company's integrity, I would have acted immediately. She's been terminated, and I'm conducting a full audit of her projects to ensure there are no other irregularities. You handled this with more grace than I could have. If you need anything, my door is always open. Harrison, I wrote back. Thank you, Harrison. I appreciate your professionalism. This isn't about revenge, it's about accountability. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Around 2 o'clock, Claire knocked on my door. There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Who? Amber Fletcher. My blood went cold. Security didn't escort her out? She's refusing to leave the lobby until she talks to you. Claire looked nervous. Should I call security? I should have. Should have had Amber removed, banned from the premises, charged with trespassing, but something in me wanted to face her. Wanted to look the woman who'd helped destroy my marriage in the eye and see what she had to say for herself. Send her up, I said, but stay close. If things get heated, I want you to call security immediately. Claire nodded and disappeared. 5 minutes later, my office door opened, and Amber Fletcher walked in. She looked different than she had at the gala. No designer dress, no perfect makeup. She wore jeans and a wrinkled sweater, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were red from crying, mascara smudged. She looked young, 26, maybe 27, 10 years younger than me. You destroyed him, she said without preamble. You destroyed both of us. No, I replied calmly. Jordan destroyed himself. You helped. He loves me. Her voice cracked. He was going to leave you anyway. We were going to build a life together. With my money. In a condo my bonus was going to pay for. She flinched. He said you didn't care, that you were married to your job, that you ignored him for years. He said you were cold. I stood up, walked around my desk to face her directly. Let me tell you what Jordan is. He's a liar, a manipulator, a thief. He told you I was cold because it justified his betrayal. He told you I didn't care because it made you feel special, chosen, better than me. Tears were streaming down her face now. But he loves me. Does he? I pulled up my phone, opened the folder of screenshots I'd been saving. These are from last month. Text messages between Jordan and another woman, someone he met at a conference. He was planning to visit her in Austin next month. I showed her the screen. Flirty messages, suggestive emojis, promises to meet up. Amber stared at them, her face going pale. You were never special to Jordan, I said quietly. You were convenient, available, young enough to believe his lies, and when he got bored with you, he would have moved on to someone else. You're lying. But her voice had no conviction. I'm not, and deep down, you know it. I set my phone down. Amber, I'm not going to pretend I feel sorry for you. You knew Jordan was married. You chose to pursue him anyway. You helped him steal from this company and from me personally. Those were your choices. I loved him. She was sobbing now, mascara running down her cheeks in dark rivers. Then, I feel sorry for you, I said, because Jordan doesn't know how to love anyone but himself. She stood there, crying, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no anger, just emptiness. This girl, because that's what she was, really, just a girl, had been a pawn in Jordan's game, but she'd chosen to play, chosen to ignore the consequences. You need to leave, I said. Security has already processed your termination. If you don't go voluntarily, they'll remove you. Amber looked at me with something like hatred. I hope you're happy. You got your revenge. But you're still alone, and you're still the cold, bitter woman Jordan said you were. Maybe, I agreed, but I'm also the woman who owns her own house, who has a career I built myself, who doesn't need a man to define her worth. Can you say the same? She couldn't. She left without another word, and I watched her go with a strange sense of finality. That chapter was closed now. Whatever happened next, it would happen without Jordan, without Amber, without the dead weight of a marriage that should have ended years ago. I sat back down at my desk and pulled up the divorce papers. Helen had done excellent work. Jordan would be served at his parents' house, where he'd presumably fled after being escorted out of the building. He'd have 30 days to respond, 30 days to realize that I wasn't bluffing, wasn't backing down, wasn't going to let him walk away with anything he hadn't earned. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Mom told me what happened. Are you okay? Do you want me to come stay with you? I thought about it. Thought about having my sister in the house, filling the silence with her presence, her support. But I'd been alone in that house for months already. Jordan's absence didn't change anything. I'm okay. Just need some time to process. I'll call you this week. Another text, this one from a number I didn't recognize. My finger hovered over the block button, but something made me open it. Miss Nash, this is Detective Kyle Brennan with the Fraud Division. We'd like to speak with you about the allegations against Jordan Nash. Would you be available for an interview this week? My breath caught. Thomas had warned me this might happen. Corporate fraud. Criminal investigation. Jordan wasn't just losing his job, he might be facing charges. I wrote back, I'm available. I have extensive documentation of the fraudulent expenses. I'm happy to cooperate fully. The detective responded within minutes. Excellent. We'll be in touch to schedule. Thank you for your cooperation. I set my phone down and stared out the window. The harbor stretched below, boats cutting through gray-blue water, the city sprawling beyond. Somewhere out there, Jordan was realizing that his problems were bigger than just unemployment and divorce. Somewhere out there, he was understanding that actions had consequences, that you couldn't steal and lie and expect to walk away unscathed. I'd spent 4 months planning this. 4 months gathering evidence, building my case, preparing for every possible scenario. And it was working. Every piece was falling into place exactly as I designed it. So why did I feel so empty? Tuesday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Jordan's mother. I didn't listen to the voicemails. Didn't need to. I could imagine what they said. How could I do this to her son? How could I be so vindictive? Didn't I believe in forgiveness, in second chances, in the sanctity of marriage? Genevieve Nash had never liked me. I'd known that from the beginning. I was too ambitious, too focused on my career, too unwilling to make Jordan the center of my universe. At family dinners, she'd make little comments. Jordan works so hard, doesn't he? He deserves a wife who appreciates him. Or, you know, Victoria, a marriage takes effort. You can't just focus on yourself all the time. As if I was the problem. as if my 60-hour work weeks were a character flaw rather than the reason we could afford the house. Jordan loved the car he drove, the lifestyle he enjoyed. I blocked her number too. At the office, things had shifted. People weren't avoiding eye contact anymore. Instead, they were nodding at me in the hallways, giving me small smiles of solidarity. The men looked uncomfortable, maybe recognizing that what Jordan had done could have been them. The women looked proud. Claire brought me coffee and a bagel I hadn't asked for. "You need to eat," she said firmly. "You barely touched lunch yesterday." She was right. I'd been running on adrenaline and spite for days. Now that both were fading, exhaustion was creeping in. "Thank you," I said, accepting the food. "What's on the schedule today?" "Conference call with Pacific Rim at 10. Department heads meeting at 1. And Detective Brennan called. He wants to meet Thursday afternoon if that works for you." "It does. Add it to my calendar. Already done." Claire hesitated. "How are you doing? Really?" It was the same question everyone kept asking, and I still didn't have a good answer. How was I? Angry, relieved, terrified, grieving, powerful, broken. All of it at once, in waves that left me dizzy. "I'm surviving," I said finally. "That's enough for now." The morning passed in meetings and emails. Work was a blessing, a distraction, something I could control when everything else felt chaotic. The Pacific Rim call went well. They had no idea about my personal drama, and I intended to keep it that way. This was business, professional, separate from the disaster my private life had become. At lunch, I sat in my office and finally opened my laptop to check social media. I'd been avoiding it, didn't want to see the gossip, the speculation, the judgment, but I needed to know what was being said. The gala video was everywhere. Hundreds of shares, thousands of comments. Most were sympathetic people slamming Jordan for his public display, praising me for keeping my composure, but there were others. Comments calling me frigid, saying I probably drove him to cheat, suggesting I was too focused on my career to be a good wife. I closed the laptop. Those people didn't know me, didn't know my marriage, didn't know how many nights I'd come home to an empty house because Jordan was working late, didn't know how many times I'd tried to plan date nights, only to have him cancel at the last minute, didn't know that I'd been dying inside our marriage for years before he ever touched Amber Fletcher. My phone rang. Helen, my attorney. "Victoria, we have a problem." My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "Jordan is contesting the divorce. He's claiming that you destroyed his career in retaliation for the affair, and he wants alimony. Substantial alimony." I almost laughed. "He wants me to pay him?" "Yes. He's arguing that you used your position at Grayson Industries to get him fired unfairly, that his career prospects are now destroyed because of your vindictive actions. He's asking for $5,000 a month for 5 years. That's insane. He committed fraud. He stole company money." "I know, and we'll fight it." "But Victoria, this is going to get messy." He's hired a very aggressive attorney, someone who specializes in high-conflict divorces. "Who?" "Gordon Pierce." I knew that name. Gordon Pierce was a shark. He represented men in contentious divorces, men who wanted to take their wives for everything they could. He was expensive, ruthless, and very good at his job. "How is Jordan affording him?" I asked. "He just lost his job. I don't know. Maybe his parents are paying. Maybe he has money stashed somewhere we don't know about yet. But we need to be prepared for a fight." After Helen hung up, I sat at my desk, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. This wasn't over, not even close. Jordan wasn't going to quietly accept defeat. He was going to drag this out, try to destroy me the way I destroyed him, paint himself as the victim in a story where he was clearly the villain. Fine. Let him try. I'd been documenting everything for months. I had evidence most people could only dream of in a divorce case. I had timelines, receipts, witness statements. I had truth on my side. But more than that, I had something Jordan had never understood about me. I had resilience, stubbornness, the ability to endure pain and keep moving forward. He'd mistaken my patience for weakness, my composure for coldness. He'd thought that because I didn't scream and cry and make scenes, I wasn't hurting. He'd been wrong about everything. Thursday afternoon, I met Detective Brennan at a coffee shop near the police station. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s. Maybe, with sharp eyes and a careful way of speaking that told me he didn't miss much. "Miss Nash," he said, shaking my hand. "Thank you for meeting with me. Of course, I want to cooperate fully." We sat at a corner table away from other customers. He pulled out a notebook and a digital recorder. "Do you mind if I record this?" Not at all. He pressed record. Let's start at the beginning. When did you first suspect your husband was using company funds inappropriately? I walked him through it. The first hotel receipt I'd found, the pattern of Friday night bookings, my decision to hire a private investigator, the discovery of the fraudulent expense reports, the money transfers, the plans to flee to Singapore. Detective Brennan took notes, asked clarifying questions, requested copies of everything I had. I'd brought my laptop with scanned documents, and he spent an hour reviewing them, occasionally whistling under his breath. "This is thorough," he said finally. "Most fraud cases, we have to dig for evidence. You've done our job for us. I wanted to be sure. I wasn't going to make accusations I couldn't prove." Smart. He closed his notebook. "Here's where we are. Based on what you've shown me, we have enough to charge Jordan Nash with embezzlement and fraud. The amounts are significant enough that he's looking at felony charges. If convicted, he could face 3 to 5 years in prison." Prison. The word hung in the air between us. However, Detective Brennan continued, "He might try to make a deal. Plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for probation and restitution. That's fairly common in white-collar cases, especially for first-time offenders. What would restitution mean? He'd have to pay back everything he stole, with interest, and possibly penalties. I thought about that. Jordan paying back $12,000 to Grayson Industries? Maybe more, depending on what other fraudulent expenses the audit uncovered. It wouldn't destroy him financially, but it would hurt, especially since he was now unemployed and bleeding money on legal fees. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Your testimony. If this goes to trial, we'll need you to testify about the joint account, the money transfers, your discovery of the fraud. Can you do that? Could I sit in a courtroom and publicly detail my husband's betrayal? Let a jury see my bank statements, my phone records, my private pain turned into evidence?" "Yes," I said. "I can do that." "Good." Detective Brennan stood, handed me his card. "We'll be in touch. And Miss Nash, I'm sorry you're going through this, but you're doing the right thing. Men like your husband, they get away with it because people are too afraid or too embarrassed to speak up. You're not. That takes courage." After he left, I sat in the coffee shop for a long time, watching people come and go. A couple holding hands. A woman working on her laptop. Wedding ring glinting in the afternoon light. A man buying flowers, probably for his wife or girlfriend. Normal people, living normal lives, not sitting in coffee shops discussing fraud charges and divorce attorneys. How had I gotten here? I knew the answer. I'd gotten here by marrying a man I'd thought I loved, by believing in promises that turned out to be lies, by working so hard to build a life that I'd failed to notice my husband was dismantling it from the inside. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. "Dinner at my place Friday night? You shouldn't be alone right now." I started to decline. Started to say I was fine, I needed space, I could handle this by myself. But the truth was, I was exhausted, tired of being strong, tired of holding everything together. "Okay. What time?" 7. "And Victoria? We love you. You know that, right?" I did know that. My family had always supported me. My mother might be overbearing. My sister might be nosy. But they loved me. They'd stand by me through this. "I know. See you Friday." I drove back to the office, but instead of going inside, I sat in my car in the parking garage. The concrete walls pressed in, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My life felt like this enclosed, artificial, illuminated by harsh light that showed every flaw. I pulled out my phone and, before I could stop myself, I called Jordan. He answered on the first ring. "Victoria, you're suing me for alimony," I said. "No greeting, no preamble, I need to survive. You destroyed my career. You destroyed your career, I just documented it. That's not how the court will see it." His voice was cold, defensive. "You had a choice, Victoria. You could have handled this privately. Instead, you humiliated me in front of the entire company. You cost me my job, my reputation, my future. What about what you cost me?" My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. "What about my trust? My dignity? My bonus that you were planning to steal? I made a mistake. One mistake, and you're acting like I'm a monster. One mistake?" I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Jordan, you had an affair for 4 months. You lied to me every single day. You stole from our joint account. You committed fraud. Those aren't mistakes. Those are choices. Silence. Then, I loved you, Victoria. I really did. But you were never there. Always at work, always putting your career first. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to talk to me, to tell me you were unhappy, to go to counseling, to get a divorce like an adult. I was gripping the steering wheel now, knuckles white. You weren't supposed to betray me and then blame me for your betrayal. You want to know the truth? His voice had an edge now, sharp and mean. I stopped loving you years ago. You're cold, Victoria. Emotionless. You care more about quarterly reports than you do about human connection. Amber made me feel alive again. She made me feel like I mattered. Then why didn't you just leave? The question hung between us, unanswered, because I knew why. Jordan hadn't left because leaving meant giving up the lifestyle I provided. The house, the car, the financial security. He'd wanted the comfort of marriage without the commitment. The benefits without the responsibility. I'm not paying you alimony, I said finally. Fight it if you want, but you won't win. I have proof of everything, Jordan. Everything. We'll see. He hung up. I sat in my car shaking. That phone call had been a mistake. I'd known it even as I was dialing, but some self-destructive part of me had needed to hear his voice. Needed confirmation that the man I'd married was really gone, replaced by this stranger who blamed me for his own choices. Well, I had my confirmation. Jordan wasn't sorry, wasn't remorseful. He was angry that I'd fought back, angry that I'd refused to be the silent victim he'd expected me to be. Good, let him be angry. I'd been angry for 4 months. Now it was his turn. Friday night at Diane's house was exactly what I needed. My sister lived in a cozy brownstone in the arts district, filled with mismatched furniture and colorful art she'd collected over the years. It smelled like garlic and rosemary. She was making her famous roasted chicken, the one comfort food I'd loved since childhood. You look terrible, Diane said when she opened the door. Thanks. You look great too. She laughed and pulled me into a hug. Diane was 3 years younger than me, a graphic designer with a bohemian style and a personality that was all warmth and ease. We were opposites in almost every way, but she was my best friend. The one person who'd never judged me, never tried to change me. Come on, she said. Wine's already poured. Her husband, Antonio, was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. He gave me a sympathetic smile. Hey, Victoria. Rough week, huh? Understatement of the century. We ate dinner around their small dining table, and for an hour I felt almost normal. We talked about Diane's latest design project, Antonio's work at the hospital, the trip they were planning to Italy next summer. Nobody mentioned Jordan. Nobody asked how I was doing. It was blissfully, wonderfully ordinary. After dinner, Diane and I sat on her back porch with more wine while Antonio cleaned up inside. The November air was crisp, and I wrapped myself in the blanket she'd brought out. Okay, Diane said. Now we can talk about it. I don't know what to say. Start with how you're actually feeling. Not the polished version you give everyone else. The real version. I took a long sip of wine. I'm angry. So angry I can barely breathe sometimes. And I'm sad. But not the way I expected. I'm not sad about losing Jordan. I'm sad about losing who I thought he was. The man I married doesn't exist. Maybe he never did. He existed, Diane said softly. But people change. Or maybe they just get tired of pretending to be someone they're not. Did you know? I asked. Did you suspect he was cheating? She was quiet for a moment. I suspected he wasn't happy. At Christmas last year, he seemed distant, restless. But I thought it was work stress, or just normal marriage stuff. I never imagined he'd betray you like this. Everyone keeps saying that. I never imagined. But I should have seen it coming. Don't do that. Diane turned to face me fully. Don't blame yourself for his choices. Jordan is responsible for what he did, not you. But maybe if I'd been more attentive, if I'd worked less, been home more, stop. Her voice was firm now. Victoria, I've watched you build your career from nothing. You worked your ass off to get where you are. You earned every promotion, every success, and Jordan benefited from that. He lived in the house you bought, drove the car you paid for. He had a job because you recommended him. If he felt neglected, he could have said something. He could have acted like an adult. Instead, he lied and stole and blamed you for his own failures. Tears were sliding down my face now. I hadn't cried in front of anyone since this started, but here, safe with my sister, I could let it out. I just feel so stupid, I whispered. How did I not know? How did I miss it for 4 months? Because you trusted him. Because you're not the kind of person who goes through someone's phone or checks their credit card statements obsessively. You gave him the benefit of the doubt because that's what you do in a marriage. Diane squeezed my hand. Jordan took advantage of your trust. That's on him, not you. We sat in silence for a while, and I felt something shift inside me, a small release of the guilt I'd been carrying. Maybe Diane was right. Maybe I didn't have to shoulder the blame for Jordan's betrayal. Maybe I could just be angry, just be hurt, without turning it inward. There's something else, I said. The detective, they're probably going to charge Jordan with felony fraud. He could go to prison. Diane's eyes widened. Oh my God. Part of me wants that. Wants him to face consequences. But part of me... I trailed off, not sure how to finish. Part of you still cares about him, Diane said gently. That's normal, Victoria. You can be angry at someone and still not want their life destroyed. That's what makes you a good person. I don't feel like a good person. I feel like I've become someone I don't recognize. Someone hard and calculating and vengeful. You're not vengeful. You're holding someone accountable. There's a difference. She refilled both our wine glasses. And maybe you have become harder, but that's not a bad thing. You were soft before, and Jordan walked all over you. Now you're showing everyone that you won't be treated that way. That's strength, not cruelty. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You've just been too busy conquering the corporate world to notice. We laughed, and it felt good. Like, maybe I could still find moments of joy even in the middle of this disaster. Later, when I was getting ready to leave, Antonio pulled me aside. Hey, Victoria, I know this isn't my place, but Jordan doesn't deserve you. He never did. And someday, when all this is over, you're going to find someone who actually appreciates what an amazing woman you are. Thanks, Antonio. I'm serious. You're brilliant, successful, gorgeous, kind. Any man would be lucky to have you. Jordan was just too stupid to realize it. I hugged him, grateful for his words even if I didn't quite believe them yet. Right now, the idea of trusting someone again, of opening my heart to another person, felt impossible. But maybe someday, when the wounds healed. When I could think about love without feeling nauseated, I drove home through quiet streets, the city settling into its Friday night rhythm. Couples walking hand in hand, groups of friends laughing outside bars, life happening all around me while I felt suspended in this strange in-between space. The house was dark when I arrived. Empty. Jordan's absence was everywhere in the clean kitchen. He used to leave messy. In the silent garage where his car used to be parked. In the bedroom where his side of the closet now stood empty. I had removed all his things last weekend, packed them into boxes, and had them delivered to his parents' house. I couldn't sleep in a room that still held evidence of him, couldn't walk past his clothes every morning and pretend my life hadn't completely changed. Now the house felt like mine again. Not ours. Mine. I poured myself a glass of water and stood at the kitchen window looking out at the backyard. We'd had plans for this space. A garden maybe, a deck for entertaining. Children playing on a swing set. All those plans were dead now. All those futures erased. But new plans could grow in their place. Different plans? Plans that didn't require Jordan, didn't depend on a marriage that had been broken long before I'd admitted it. I could sell this house. Buy something smaller, cozier, truly mine. I could travel all those trips I'd put off because Jordan didn't want to go, didn't have the time, didn't share my interests. I could invest in myself, my career, my happiness. I could rebuild. The thought was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. Starting over at 37 felt daunting, but it also felt like possibility, like freedom. I went to bed that night feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Small and fragile, barely a spark, but there. Glowing in the darkness. Maybe I would be okay after all. The divorce proceedings dragged on through November and into December. Jordan fought everything: the division of assets, the timeline, my request for him to pay his share of the joint credit card debt. His attorney, Gordon Pierce, filed motion after motion, dragging out the process, running up legal fees on both sides. Helen kept me updated through weekly calls. He's trying to exhaust you, she explained. Hoping you'll settle just to make it go away. It's a common tactic in contentious divorces. I'm not settling. Good. Because we're going to win. His case for alimony is weak, and it gets weaker every time we submit more evidence of his fraud. The criminal case was moving faster. Detective Brennan had gathered enough evidence to present to the district attorney who'd filed formal charges. Jordan was arraigned in early December, pleading not guilty. His attorney argued for probation and restitution, but the DA wasn't budging. They wanted jail time. I tried not to think about it. Tried to focus on work, on the merger that was finally, officially complete. Pacific Rim Technologies and Grayson Industries were now one company, valued at $3 billion. I'd been promoted to Executive Vice President of Operations with a salary increase that made my old bonus look like pocket change. Thomas had made the announcement at the company-wide meeting, and the applause had been genuine, enthusiastic. My colleagues respected what I'd accomplished, both professionally and personally. They saw me as strong, resilient, someone who'd faced adversity and come out fighting. I wasn't sure I felt that way. Mostly, I felt tired. But I smiled at the meeting, accepted congratulations, acted like everything was fine. That's what you did. You performed competence, performed strength, until eventually it became real. My mother called constantly, offering unsolicited advice. You should take a vacation, she said. Get away from all this stress. Maybe a cruise? Mom, I just got promoted. I can't take a vacation right now. Your career will always be there. Your mental health won't if you keep pushing yourself like this. She wasn't wrong, but I didn't know how to stop. Work was the only thing that made sense, the only place I felt in control. If I stopped, if I let myself actually feel everything I'd been suppressing, I was afraid I'd fall apart completely. Christmas approached, and with it came the realization that this would be my first holiday alone. Jordan and I had always hosted a Christmas Eve party, inviting friends and colleagues. This year, I'd canceled it. Couldn't face the questions, the sympathy, the inevitable gossip. Instead, I spent Christmas Eve at Diane and Antonio's, along with my mother and a handful of close friends. It was nice, cozy, and warm and full of love, but it also highlighted everything I'd lost. Everyone else had partners, families, traditions that had evolved over years. I had an empty house and a pending divorce. Next year will be better, Diane whispered as we cleaned up after dinner. How do you know? Because you'll have had time to heal, time to figure out who you are without Jordan, time to build a life that's actually yours. What if I don't want to be alone? Then you won't be. But Victoria, you need to be okay with yourself first. Otherwise, you'll just repeat the same patterns with someone new. She was probably right. But the idea of spending the next year or longer alone felt unbearable. I'd been in a relationship for 15 years. I didn't know how to be single anymore. The week between Christmas and New Year's was quiet. Most people were on vacation, offices half empty. I should have taken time off too, but I couldn't stand the thought of sitting in my house with nothing to do but think. So I worked, reviewed Q4 reports, planned strategies for the new year, reorganized my entire filing system because I needed something, anything to do. On December 31st, Claire knocked on my office door at 4 o'clock. Go home, she said. It's New Year's Eve. Nobody should be in the office. I have things to finish. They can wait until January. Victoria, seriously. You've been here every day since Christmas. You need a break. I'm fine. You're not. She came in and closed the door behind her. I'm saying this as your assistant and your friend. You're working yourself into the ground. It's not healthy. What else am I supposed to do? Go home and cry? Spend New Year's Eve alone feeling sorry for myself? Actually, yes. Feel your feelings. Cry if you need to. Stop pretending you're fine when you're clearly not. Her words hit harder than I expected. I'd been so focused on staying strong, on proving I could handle everything, that I'd forgotten how to be vulnerable, even with myself. I don't know how, I admitted quietly. Claire's expression softened. Start by going home, take a bath, eat some ice cream, watch bad movies. Let yourself be human for one night. She was right. I knew she was right. I packed up my things and drove home through streets already preparing for midnight celebrations. People were out, laughing, heading to parties and bars and Times Square watch parties. The whole city was looking forward, ready to start fresh. Maybe I could too. At home, I did exactly what Claire suggested. I took a long bath, ordered Chinese takeout, put on pajamas at 6 o'clock. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't want to see happy couples kissing at midnight. Instead, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine and let myself think about the year I'd just survived. The betrayal, the discovery, the confrontation, the divorce proceedings, the criminal charges, the endless legal battles and emotional exhaustion, but also the promotion, the merger, the moment when I'd stood in that conference room and taken control of my life, The realization that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. At 11:45, I poured a second glass of wine and walked out to my backyard. The night was cold and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. I could hear fireworks starting in the distance, celebrations beginning early. I thought about making resolutions, losing weight, exercising more, finding new hobbies. The usual things people promise themselves, but those felt hollow, superficial. What I really wanted was simpler. To learn to be alone without being lonely. To trust myself. To believe that I deserved better than what Jordan had given me. At midnight, fireworks exploded across the sky. I raised my glass to the empty yard, the dark house, the uncertain future. Here's to new beginnings, I said to no one, and somewhere in the distance, the city roared its agreement. January brought the trial. Jordan had rejected the plea deal. His attorney convinced him he could win, that a jury would see me as a vindictive ex-wife who destroyed his career out of spite. They'd argue that the relationship with Amber, while inappropriate, didn't constitute fraud, that the expense reports were legitimate business expenses I was mischaracterizing. Helen thought they were insane. We have bank statements, she said, hotel records showing he was with Amber, not clients, phone logs proving he wasn't conducting business. They have nothing. But nothing didn't stop them from trying. The trial started on a freezing Monday in mid-January. I wore a gray suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. Professional, composed, unshakable. The armor I'd perfected over 8 months of hell. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, uncomfortable benches, fluorescent lights that made everyone look slightly ill. Jordan sat at the defense table with Gordon Pierce, refusing to look at me. He'd lost weight, I noticed. Looked older, harder. Good. The prosecution went first. They laid out the case methodically, the expense reports, the hotel bookings, the money transfers. They called witnesses from Grayson Industries, the accounting manager who'd processed Jordan's expenses, the IT specialist who'd retrieved his deleted emails, the hotel manager who confirmed he'd booked the same room every Friday for 4 months. Each witness chipped away at Jordan's defense. Each piece of evidence made it clearer that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a vindictive ex-wife's revenge. This was fraud. Simple, documented, undeniable fraud. Then it was my turn to testify. I'd been dreading this moment for weeks, dreading having to sit in that witness box and tell my story to a room full of strangers, dreading the cross-examination, where Gordon Pierce would try to paint me as bitter, angry, out for revenge. But when they called my name, I stood and walked to the witness stand with my head high. I'd told the truth once already, in that conference room 8 months ago. I could do it again. The prosecutor, a woman named Natalie Foster, started gently. Miss Nash, can you tell the court about your relationship with the defendant? We were married for 12 years, I said. My voice was steady, clear. We met in college, married after graduation. I always thought we had a good relationship. A partnership. When did you first suspect that your husband was having an affair? In June. I found a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. He claimed it was a business expense, but something felt wrong. What did you do? I started looking more carefully at our finances. I found more receipts. Always the same hotel. Always on Fridays. I hired a private investigator in July to confirm my suspicions. And what did the investigator discover? That Jordan was meeting Amber Fletcher at the Riverside Suites every Friday night. They'd have dinner, spend the night together, then he'd come home the next morning and tell me he'd been working late. Natalie showed me photos from the investigation. Jordan and Amber entering the hotel. Jordan and Amber at restaurants. Jordan and Amber shopping together, laughing, holding hands. These are hard to look at, Natalie said gently. How did you feel when you saw them? Betrayed, humiliated, angry. I paused, but also determined. I realized that if I was going to end my marriage, I needed to protect myself financially, so I started documenting everything. We went through the evidence piece by piece. The bank statements showing money transfers, the expense reports Jordan had submitted, the company credit card statements proving those expenses were fraudulent. Did you report this to your company? Yes. In October, after I discovered Jordan was planning to steal my performance bonus and move to Singapore with Miss Fletcher, I presented the evidence to our board of directors. They terminated him immediately and reported the fraud to the police. And how did the defendant react? He was angry. He blamed me for destroying his career. He said I was vindictive, that I could have handled it privately. Could you have? No. I looked directly at the jury. This wasn't just a personal matter. Jordan committed fraud against our company. He stole money that could have gone to other employees, other departments. He violated the trust of his colleagues and his employer. I had an obligation to report it. Natalie nodded. No further questions. Gordon Pierce stood for cross-examination. He was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive suit, slicked back hair, smile that didn't reach his eyes. Miss Nash, he began, isn't it true that you and your husband were having marital problems long before you discovered this alleged affair? We had the normal ups and downs of any marriage. I didn't realize we were having serious problems until I found out he was cheating. But you were working 60, 70 hours a week, weren't you? Barely home? Neglecting your marriage? I was working hard, yes. But so was Jordan, or at least that's what he told me. You're a very successful woman, Miss Nash. Executive Vice President now, isn't that right? Yes. Must be hard for a man being married to someone more successful than him. Someone who out-earns him, outranks him, essentially supports him financially. I saw where this was going. My husband never complained about my success. In fact, he benefited from it significantly. Is it possible that your husband felt emasculated? Diminished? That he sought comfort elsewhere because you made him feel inadequate? The prosecutor objected. The judge sustained it. But the damage was done. Pierce had planted the seed that maybe I was partially to blame for Jordan's betrayal. Let's talk about the gala, Pierce continued. The night you saw your husband with Miss Fletcher, you humiliated him in front of 200 people, didn't you? I didn't do anything. I watched my husband kiss another woman. He humiliated himself. But you could have handled it privately. Instead, you waited 3 days and then destroyed his career in front of his colleagues and superiors. That seems vindictive. That seems like accountability, I replied. Jordan committed fraud. The board had a right to know. Or maybe you saw an opportunity for revenge. A chance to punish your husband for his infidelity by destroying everything he'd worked for. Jordan destroyed his own career. I just documented it. Pierce tried for another 20 minutes to shake me, to make me look angry or vindictive or unreasonable. But I'd prepared for this. I knew every question he might ask, every angle he might take, and I'd decided months ago that I wasn't going to let Jordan or his attorney make me the villain in this story. When Pierce finally sat down, I felt exhausted but victorious. I'd told my truth. Whether the jury believed me was out of my hands now. The trial lasted 3 more days. Jordan testified, claiming the expenses were legitimate, that he'd been entertaining clients I was too jealous to acknowledge. But the prosecution tore his story apart. They had phone records, email logs, witness testimony. Every piece of evidence contradicted Jordan's version of events. Amber Fletcher testified too, looking pale and nervous. She confirmed the affair, confirmed Jordan had used company money to pay for their hotel rooms. Gordon Pierce tried to paint her as a sympathetic figure, young, naive, taken advantage of by an older, married man, but the jury didn't seem convinced. On the 4th day, both sides gave closing arguments. Natalie Foster was brilliant, laying out the timeline of fraud with devastating precision. Gordon Pierce did his best to muddy the waters, but even he seemed to know it was a losing battle. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, I was sitting in the courtroom with Helen, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor. The foreperson stood. On the count of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of fraud, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. I heard Jordan's mother crying, heard Gordon Pierce objecting, heard Natalie Foster saying something to her assistant, but all I could focus on was Jordan's face. He looked stunned, broken, like he couldn't believe this was actually happening. Part of me felt satisfaction, justice, validation. But part of me felt something else. Sadness, maybe. Grief for the man I'd thought he was, the man who'd never really existed. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Jordan would likely get 2 to 3 years in prison, plus restitution. His life, his career, his reputation, all of it was gone, and I'd been the one to take it from him. Outside the courtroom, reporters were waiting. Apparently, my case had gotten attention, the scorned wife who'd taken down her cheating husband, the corporate executive who'd chosen justice over silence. They shouted questions as Helen, and I pushed through to her car. Miss Nash, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you have any regrets? Would you do it again? I didn't answer. Just got in the car and let Helen drive me away from the chaos. You did it, she said, glancing at me. You actually did it. Yeah, I said softly. I did, but I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. The divorce was finalized in February. Jordan gave up fighting after the criminal verdict. His attorney advised him to accept whatever terms I offered, since fighting would only make things worse. He signed the papers without contest, and just like that, 12 years of marriage were legally over. I got the house, my car, my retirement accounts. Jordan got his personal belongings and a mountain of debt. The court ordered him to pay restitution to Grayson Industries, $12,000 plus interest, to be paid in monthly installments after his release from prison. He'd also been ordered to pay me back for the money he'd transferred from our joint account, $20,000 plus my legal fees. Given that he was about to spend 2 years in prison, I wasn't expecting to see that money anytime soon. But I didn't care about the money. Not really. I cared about the principle, about proving that actions have consequences, that betrayal doesn't go unpunished, that women don't have to be silent victims. Sentencing had been brutal to watch. Jordan's mother had testified, crying, begging the judge for mercy. His father had talked about what a good son Jordan had been, how one mistake shouldn't define his entire life. Even Amber had written a letter, claiming Jordan had been under tremendous pressure, that he'd made poor choices but didn't deserve prison. The judge hadn't been moved. "Mr. Nash," she'd said, "you violated the trust of your employer, your colleagues, and your wife. You stole money that wasn't yours. You committed fraud, and then you lied about it repeatedly. This wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern of deliberate deception. 2 years in minimum security, with possibility of parole after 18 months. I'd watched Jordan's face crumble, watched him realize that his life as he'd known it was over, and I'd felt nothing. No satisfaction, no revenge high, no sense of victory, just emptiness. Now, sitting alone in my house on a cold February night, I tried to figure out how I felt about everything. The affair, the trial, the divorce, the aftermath. It had been 8 months since the gala. 8 months since my life had imploded and reformed into something new. Was I happy? No, but I wasn't miserable either. I was existing. Moving through my days with purpose but without joy. Working, sleeping, repeating. Diane was worried. "You need to do something for yourself," she'd said last week. Something that has nothing to do with work or the divorce. A hobby, a class, anything. I don't have time for hobbies. You have to make time. Victoria, you're disappearing into your work. It's not healthy. She was probably right. But work was safe. Work made sense. Work didn't require vulnerability or trust or emotional risk. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Miss Nash, this is Patricia Holmes from the Grayson Board. I have a business proposition for you. Would you be available for lunch this week? Patricia Holmes." The tech mogul, the woman who'd sold her company for hundreds of millions. What could she possibly want with me? I wrote back, "I'm available Thursday. Time and place? The Harbor Club, 1 p.m. Looking forward to it. The Harbor Club was the most exclusive restaurant in the city, the kind of place where deals worth billions got made over expensive wine. I had no idea what Patricia wanted, but I was intrigued. Thursday arrived cold and bright. I wore my best suit, the navy Armani I'd worn to the board meeting 8 months ago. War paint. Armor. The uniform of a woman who'd survived and was ready for whatever came next. The Harbor Club was everything I'd expected. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, hushed conversations conducted in corners where nobody could overhear. Patricia was already there, sitting at a prime table with a view of the water. "Victoria," she said, standing to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for the invitation." We ordered salmon for her, chicken for me, and made small talk while we waited for the food. But I could tell Patricia was working up to something. She had that look successful people get when they're about to make an offer they think might be refused. "I'll cut to the chase," she said finally. "I'm starting a venture capital firm. Women-focused, women-led. We'll be investing in female founders, companies with female CEOs, businesses that prioritize gender equity, and I want you to join me as a partner." I stared at her. "I'm not a venture capitalist. I'm an operations executive. You're a strategic thinker with excellent business instincts. You built the most profitable division at Grayson, negotiated a $3 billion merger, and you have the respect of every board member I've talked to? That's exactly what I need. Patricia, I appreciate the offer, but I have a career at Grayson. I just got promoted. And you'll plateau there within 5 years," she interrupted. "Thomas is 72. He'll retire soon, and when he does, the board will bring in an outside CEO, someone younger, probably male, definitely with an Ivy League pedigree and connections you don't have. You'll be passed over, and you'll spend the next 20 years in the same position, watching less qualified men climb over you. The words stung because they were probably true. I'd seen it happen to other women. The glass ceiling wasn't obvious at companies like Grayson. It was subtle, invisible, enforced through old boys' networks and unspoken biases. What you did to Jordan, Patricia continued, that took guts, intelligence, the willingness to blow up your personal life to protect your professional integrity. That's the kind of partner I want. Someone who doesn't play it safe. Someone who fights. I'm not sure I have any more fight left in me, I admitted. Yes, you do. You're just tired right now. But trust me, Victoria, you haven't even begun to reach your potential. At Grayson, you'll always be the woman who reported her husband. People will respect you, but they'll also be wary. They'll wonder if you're vindictive, if you hold grudges, if you can be trusted. That's not fair. No, it's not. But it's reality. She leaned forward. With me, you'd be starting fresh, building something new. And you'd be helping women who've been where you are overlooked, underestimated, fighting for recognition in a world designed to keep them down. I thought about it, really thought about it. Leaving Grayson after 8 years felt impossible, but staying and watching my career stagnate felt worse. I'd need time to think about it, I said finally. Of course, take a month. But, Victoria? She smiled. Don't let fear hold you back. You've already proven you're brave enough to destroy everything and rebuild. Do it again. This time, on your terms. I didn't tell anyone about Patricia's offer at first. Not Diane, not my mother, not even Claire. I needed to process it myself, figure out what I actually wanted versus what everyone expected me to want. The safe choice was staying at Grayson. I had seniority, respect, a clear path forward. The risky choice was leaving for a startup venture capital firm that might fail, might succeed, might change my entire career trajectory. For weeks, I went back and forth, made pro and con lists, analyzed financial projections Patricia had sent me, talked to mentors, read articles about venture capital, researched the industry. But underneath all the rational analysis was something else. Fear, not of failure. I'd already failed spectacularly at marriage, and I'd survived. Fear of success. Fear that if I actually reached for what I wanted, if I stopped playing it safe, I might discover I was capable of more than I'd ever imagined. And that was terrifying. In March, spring arrived tentatively. Trees budding, flowers pushing through cold earth, the world slowly waking up. I found myself noticing it for the first time in months. Noticing beauty, possibility, life continuing despite everything. One Saturday afternoon, I drove to the Riverside Suites. I hadn't been there since the trial, hadn't wanted to see the place where Jordan had betrayed me, but now, for some reason, I needed to face it. The hotel was nice, but not spectacular. Mid-range, business casual. The kind of place people picked for convenience rather than romance. I parked in the lot and stared at the building, trying to feel something. Anger, hurt, betrayal. But I felt nothing. This was just a building. Just rooms with beds and bathrooms and generic art on the walls. Jordan had brought his affair here, but the building itself was innocent. Neutral, uninvolved. I drove home and, for the first time in months, I cleaned. Really cleaned. Threw open windows, washed curtains, scrubbed floors, purged my closet of clothes I hadn't worn in years, donated books I'd never read, cleared out the garage where boxes of Jordan's things still sat waiting to be claimed. By evening, the house felt different. Lighter. More mine. I called Diane. I think I'm going to take the job with Patricia. What job? I explained. The venture capital firm? The opportunity? The chance to start over? Diane listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said, "Do it." Just like that? Just like that. Victoria, you've been playing it safe your whole life. You married young, built a stable career, did everything right, and where did it get you? Betrayed and divorced. Maybe it's time to take a risk. What if I fail? Then you fail, and you'll survive, because you've already survived worse. But what if you don't fail? What if you're amazing at this? I thought about that. About the possibility that I might actually be good at something new, something challenging, something entirely my own. Okay, I said. I'll do it. Good. Now come over for dinner. We're celebrating. Over the next few weeks, I gave my notice at Grayson. Thomas was disappointed but understanding. "You're making the right choice," he said. "You've outgrown what we can offer. Go build something extraordinary." My colleagues threw me a going-away party. It was bittersweet. I'd spent 8 years with these people, built relationships, shared victories and failures. But I was also excited, ready for something new. Patricia's firm officially launched in April. We called it Phoenix Capital Rising from the Ashes, starting over, transformation. I loved the symbolism. My first day, Patricia gave me an office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that made my old Grayson office look pedestrian. "Welcome to the team," she said. "Now let's go change the world." And for the first time in a year, I believed we actually might. Working at Phoenix Capital was different from anything I'd done before. At Grayson, I'd managed operations, systems, processes, efficiency. At Phoenix, I was evaluating businesses, meeting with founders, deciding whether to bet millions of dollars on someone's dream. It was terrifying and exhilarating. My first major investment was in a company called TechWell, founded by a woman named Sofia Ortega. She'd created a platform for remote healthcare, connecting patients with doctors via video chat and AI diagnostics. The technology was solid, the market was huge, and Sofia was brilliant. But she'd been turned down by 20 other VC firms. Too risky, they said. Too competitive. Not enough traction. I disagreed. I saw what they couldn't see: a woman who understood her market intimately because she'd experienced it. Sofia had started TechWell after her mother died from a treatable condition simply because she couldn't access healthcare in her rural town. That kind of personal stake, that kind of passion, it wasn't a weakness, it was a strength. Phoenix invested $5 million. Within a year, TechWell was valued at $50 million. Within 2 years, $100 million. Sofia became a tech darling, featured in magazines, speaking at conferences. And I'd been the one to believe in her when nobody else would. Other investments followed: a sustainable fashion company, a biotech startup working on women's health, an educational platform for girls in STEM, companies led by women who'd been overlooked, underestimated, told they weren't worth the risk. We proved them wrong, again and again and again. By the summer, Phoenix had become one of the most talked about firms in venture capital. We weren't the biggest, weren't the richest, but we were making waves, changing narratives, proving that investing in women wasn't just morally right, it was financially smart. Patricia and I made a good team. She had the connections, the reputation, the gravitas. I had the operational expertise, the analytical skills, the ability to spot potential others missed. Together, we were formidable. My personal life remained quiet. I dated occasionally, dinner here, a movie there, but nothing serious. I wasn't ready for serious, wasn't ready to trust someone with my heart again, but I was okay with that. For the first time in my adult life, I was comfortable being alone. I traveled, spent 2 weeks in Italy, a long weekend in Portland, a solo trip to Alaska where I watched whales breach under midnight sun. I took up painting badly and didn't care that I was terrible at it. I read books for pleasure instead of just business. I became friends with myself again. In September, exactly 1 year after the gala, I got a message from an email address I didn't recognize. "Victoria, it's Jordan. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I wanted to reach out. I'm being released next month, early release for good behavior. I wanted to apologize, not because I expect forgiveness, but because you deserve to hear it. What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed you, lied to you, stole from you. I destroyed our marriage and my career, and it was entirely my fault. You deserved better. You always deserved better. I hope you found happiness. You certainly deserve it. Take care, Jordan." I read the email 3 times, trying to figure out how I felt. Anger? No. Satisfaction? Not really. Relief that he'd finally taken responsibility? Maybe. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. Jordan had his life, whatever that looked like now. I had mine. They didn't intersect anymore, and that was fine. I deleted the email and went back to work. October brought cooler weather and a new challenge. Patricia wanted to expand Phoenix internationally, open an office in London or Singapore. She asked me to lead the expansion, scout locations, meet with potential investors. "You'd be perfect for this," she said. "You have the experience, the credibility, the strategic thinking we need." "Patricia, I've only been here 6 months, and in those 6 months, you've proven yourself 10 times over." "Victoria, I trust you. The question is, do you trust yourself?" That was always the question, wasn't it? Did I trust myself? Did I believe I was capable of more than I'd been taught to expect? Yes, I said finally. I'll do it. I spent October traveling. London first, meeting with bankers and lawyers, touring office spaces in Shoreditch and Canary Wharf. The city was electric, expensive, full of possibility. I could see Phoenix thriving here. Then Singapore. The same city where Jordan had planned to run away with Amber to build a life funded by my bonus. I hadn't wanted to come here, too many painful associations, but Patricia insisted it was the best market for Asian expansion. She was right. Singapore was perfect. Business-friendly, English-speaking, positioned at the heart of Southeast Asian growth. Within a week, I'd identified a perfect office space in the financial district, met with potential local partners, sketched out a business plan, and I'd exorcised the ghost of Jordan's betrayal. This city wasn't about him anymore. It was about my future, my success, my ability to build something extraordinary from the ruins of something broken. On my last night in Singapore, I had dinner alone at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the harbor. The view was spectacular, lights reflecting off water, the city pulsing with energy below. I thought about how far I'd come in a year, from that terrible night at the gala to this moment, sitting alone in a foreign city, confident in my abilities, comfortable in my skin. I thought about Jordan, serving time in prison, his life reduced to a small cell and scheduled meals. I didn't feel sorry for him. Didn't feel vindictive either. I just felt distant, like he was a character from a story I'd read long ago, someone who'd once been important but was now just a footnote. The revenge I'd taken, exposing his fraud, reporting him to the police, destroying his career, it had been necessary. Justice, accountability, proof that women don't have to accept betrayal silently. But it hadn't made me happy. Revenge never does. What made me happy was this. Sitting alone in Singapore, planning an international expansion for a company I believed in, knowing I'd built this life myself. This was the real revenge, not destroying Jordan, but surpassing him, not bringing him down, but lifting myself up so high he couldn't even see me anymore. I flew home 2 days later, exhausted, but energized. Patricia met me at the office with champagne. How was it? Perfect. I found our London office, secured partnerships in Singapore, and mapped out a 3-year expansion plan. We can launch by January. You're amazing, you know that? I smiled. I'm learning. November passed in a blur of planning and preparations. We hired staff for the London office, secured permits, negotiated contracts. I was flying to Europe every other week, juggling time zones and cultures and 1,000 logistical details. It was overwhelming. It was thrilling. It was exactly what I needed. Diane worried I was working too hard again. You're doing the same thing you did at Grayson, she said, burying yourself in work instead of dealing with your emotions. I am dealing with my emotions. I'm just also accomplishing things while I do it. Have you talked to anyone? A therapist? I had, actually. Started seeing a counselor in the spring, working through the betrayal and the divorce and the complicated feelings around Jordan's incarceration. It helped. Not in any dramatic way, but gradually, like physical therapy for a broken heart. I'm okay, Diane, really. I know you worry, but I'm genuinely happy right now. She studied me for a long moment. You know what? I believe you. You look different. Lighter. I feel lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy for years. And I finally put it down. The weight of a bad marriage, the weight of other people's expectations, of trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect employee, the perfect daughter. I'm just, tell me now. Flawed and ambitious and sometimes lonely, but real. Diane hugged me. I'm proud of you. You know that, right? I know. Thank you for sticking with me through all of this. That's what sisters do. The holidays came again, but this year felt different. Less raw, less painful. I spent Thanksgiving with Diane and Antonio, helped cook the turkey, laughed at Antonio's terrible jokes, felt genuinely grateful for the life I was building. Christmas was harder, not because I missed Jordan, I didn't, but because holidays have a way of highlighting absence. I had friends, family, a successful career, but I didn't have a partner, didn't have someone to wake up with on Christmas morning, to exchange gifts with, to build traditions with. And that was okay. That was allowed. I could be happy with my life and still acknowledge that some parts were missing. That wasn't failure, that was just reality. Patricia invited me to her annual holiday party, an extravagant affair at her penthouse with city views and champagne fountains, and 200 of the most influential people in tech and finance. I almost didn't go. Crowds weren't my thing anymore, and the thought of making small talk with strangers felt exhausting. But I went, wore a midnight blue dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, styled my hair, put on makeup, looked like a successful woman who had her life together. Fake it till you make it, right? The party was exactly as advertised, loud, glittering, full of people networking and deal-making and performing success. I grabbed a glass of wine and found a corner to observe from. Old habits. Victoria Nash, a voice said behind me. I turned. The man was handsome, tall, dark hair graying at the temples, expensive suit that somehow looked casual on him. Mid-40s? Maybe? Kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I'm sorry, I said. Have we met? We haven't. But I've heard about you. Everyone in this room has heard about you, the woman who revolutionized operations at Grayson, took down her corrupt husband, and now you're transforming venture capital. You're kind of a legend. I laughed, embarrassed. I don't know about legend. I'm just doing my job. That's what all legends say. He extended his hand. Nathan Price. I run an educational nonprofit focused on women's entrepreneurship. We shook hands. His grip was firm, warm. Victoria Nash, as you apparently already know. Would you like to get out of here? Nathan asked. Grab coffee somewhere quieter where we can actually talk? I should have said no. Should have made an excuse, protected my still healing heart, stayed safe. But something in me was tired of playing it safe. Sure, I said. Why not? We left Patricia's party and walked to a 24-hour diner 3 blocks away. The contrast was stark from champagne and caviar to coffee and pie, from performative networking to genuine conversation. Nathan told me about his nonprofit, how he'd started it after his mother, a brilliant woman who'd never had opportunities, died without realizing her potential. How he was dedicated to making sure other women didn't face the same barriers. I told him about Phoenix, about the companies we were investing in, about the satisfaction of proving that women-led businesses were worth the risk. We talked for 3 hours about work, about life, about the ways the world needed to change. It was the best conversation I'd had in years. Intelligent, passionate, real. At 2 a.m, Nathan walked me to my car. Can I see you again? He asked. Maybe dinner next week? I hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution. I'd been betrayed, destroyed, rebuilt. Did I really want to risk opening my heart again? But maybe that was exactly what I needed to do. Maybe healing wasn't about staying safe forever. Maybe it was about eventually choosing to be brave again. Okay, I said. Dinner sounds nice. He smiled, and I felt something flutter in my chest. Not love too soon for that, but possibility. The tiny, fragile hope that maybe I could trust someone again. Maybe I could build something new without fear of it being torn apart. Maybe I could have more than just a successful career. Maybe I could have a life. Nathan and I started dating in January. Slowly, carefully, like 2 people who'd both been burned and were wary of fire. Dinner once a week, coffee dates. Long walks where we talked about everything and nothing. He knew about Jordan, about the trial, about the very public implosion of my marriage. Everyone knew it had been all over the news, social media, industry gossip. But Nathan never asked for details, never pried into wounds that were still healing. When you're ready to talk about it, I'll listen, he said. Until then, I'm just happy to know who you are now. That was the thing about Nathan. He saw me as I was, not as I'd been. He didn't treat me like a victim or a warrior or a cautionary tale. He just treated me like a person. By February, we were seeing each other twice a week. By March, he'd met Diane and Antonio, who approved immediately. By April, I'd met his sister and his teenage nephew, who told Nathan I was way cooler than his last girlfriend. What happened to your last girlfriend? I asked later. She wanted different things than I did. Wanted to get married immediately, have kids right away. I wasn't ready. Are you ready now? He looked at me seriously. I'm ready for whatever feels right. No pressure, no timeline, just seeing where this goes. That felt safe, manageable, like something I could handle without falling apart. In May, Phoenix opened our London office. I flew over for the launch party, and Nathan came with me. We spent a week exploring the city museums, theaters, long walks through Hyde Park. It felt like a vacation, like something normal couples did, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. "You're different when you're not working," Nathan observed one evening over dinner in Soho. "How?" "Lighter. You smile more? Laugh more? You're always so controlled, so professional. But here, you're just you. Is that good or bad?" "It's wonderful." He reached across the table, took my hand. "Victoria, I'm falling for you. I thought you should know." My breath caught. "Nathan, you don't have to say it back. I know you're still healing. But I wanted you to know where I stand. That I'm serious about this. About us." I squeezed his hand, feeling emotions I wasn't quite ready to name. Fear, definitely, but also hope. The possibility that maybe I could love someone again. Maybe I could trust someone with my heart without it being destroyed. "Thank you," I said quietly, "for being patient with me. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." Back in the States, work continued at its usual frenetic pace. Phoenix had become one of the top VC firms in the country. We'd invested in 37 companies, with an average return of 400%. Patricia and I were featured in Forbes, Fortune, Business Insider. We were invited to speak at conferences, advise startups, mentor young entrepreneurs. It was everything I'd ever wanted professionally, everything I'd worked for. And for the first time, it didn't feel like enough. Not because I was ungrateful or unfulfilled, but because I'd realized something important. Success at work was meaningful, but it wasn't everything. I wanted more. I wanted a life that included love, partnership, possibility. I wanted what I'd thought I had with Jordan, but real this time. Honest. Built on a foundation that wouldn't crumble at the first test. In June, exactly 2 years after I'd found that first hotel receipt, Nathan asked me to move in with him. We were at his apartment, cooking dinner together, something we'd started doing regularly. He was chopping vegetables while I stirred sauce, and out of nowhere he said, "What if you didn't have to go home tonight or tomorrow night? What if this was home?" I turned off the stove. "Are you asking me to move in?" "I'm asking you to consider it. No pressure." "But Victoria, we spend almost every night together anyway, and I wake up happier when you're there than when you're not. So, yeah. I'm asking." I thought about my house. The one I'd bought before Jordan. The one I'd fought to keep in the divorce. It was mine, completely mine, and that had felt important after everything. But it also felt empty. Too big for one person. Too full of memories I was trying to forget. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Of course. Take all the time you need." I thought about it for a week. Made pro and con lists, talked to Diane, considered every angle. Moving in was a big step. A statement that this relationship was serious, permanent, worth betting on. But maybe I was ready for that. Maybe I'd healed enough to take the risk. I told Nathan yes on a Friday night in late June. He grinned, picked me up, spun me around his kitchen. "Really? Really? But I'm keeping my house for now, just in case." "Just in case? What?" "Just in case you turn out to be a secret axe murderer or something." He laughed. "Fair enough, I'll take it." I moved in over the 4th of July weekend. Brought my clothes, my books, my small collection of art. Left the furniture, the kitchen equipment, all the big stuff. Nathan's apartment was smaller than my house, but somehow felt bigger, lighter, full of possibility instead of ghosts. "Welcome home," he said when I brought in the last box. Home. I let the words settle over me, testing how it felt. Not perfect. I still had moments of panic, of wondering if I was making a mistake, of fearing that this would end like the last relationship had. But mostly, it felt right, like maybe I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Fall arrived, bringing with it cooler weather and new challenges. Phoenix was expanding again, this time into Boston and Austin, building a national network of offices focused on women-led companies. Patricia put me in charge of the entire expansion, a role that would require travel, strategy, leadership. "You're ready for this," she said. "More than ready. You've proven yourself 100 times over. Now it's time to step into your power fully. I'd spent so much of my life trying to prove myself. Prove I was smart enough, tough enough, worthy enough, but Patricia's words hit differently. She wasn't asking me to prove anything. She was simply stating a fact. I was ready. I knew it. Finally, deeply, without question, the expansion went smoothly. We opened the Boston office in October, Austin in November. Each launch was met with excitement, media coverage, enthusiastic founders eager to work with us. Phoenix was becoming more than just a venture capital firm, it was becoming a movement. Nathan supported me through all of it. The long hours, the travel, the stress. He never complained when I had to cancel dinner plans or work weekends. He understood that this was my passion, my purpose, and he loved me enough to let me pursue it fully. "You're incredible," he said one night after I'd returned from a particularly grueling week in Boston. "You know that, right?" "I'm just doing my job. You're changing the world." "That's more than a job." I kissed him, grateful for his belief in me, grateful that I'd found someone who saw my ambition as a strength rather than a threat, who celebrated my success instead of resenting it. In December, Patricia called me into her office. "Sit down," she said. "I have something to tell you." I sat, nervous. Her tone was serious and I couldn't read her expression. "I'm retiring," she said simply. "Not immediately, I'll stay on through next year to help with the transition. But I'm 78 years old, Victoria. I've built everything I wanted to build. It's time for the next generation to take over." My mind raced. "Who's going to run Phoenix?" "You are." She smiled. "If you want it." "Me?" "Patricia. I've only been here 2 years, and in those 2 years, you've proven yourself to be everything this firm needs. You're strategic, compassionate, brilliant. You understand the mission. The portfolio companies love you. The investors trust you. You're the obvious choice." "I don't know what to say." "Say yes. Say you'll take this firm I've built and make it even better. Say you'll continue the work of lifting up women, of proving that we're worth investing in." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Yes, absolutely yes." Patricia laughed, pulled me into a hug. "I knew you'd say that. We'll make the announcement in January, transition over the next year. By this time next year, Phoenix will be yours." That night, I told Nathan the news. He opened champagne, toasted to my success, told me he'd never been prouder of anyone. "CEO of a major venture capital firm at 39, he said. "That's incredible, Victoria." It feels surreal. Like I'm living someone else's life. You're living your life. The one you built from the ashes of something broken. That's the most incredible part you took, the worst thing that ever happened to you, and turned it into fuel for something extraordinary. He was right. Jordan's betrayal, the divorce, the trial, all of it had been devastating, but it had also been transformative. It had forced me to look at myself honestly, to stop settling, to demand more from life. If Jordan hadn't betrayed me, I'd probably still be at Grayson, still in a mediocre marriage with a man who didn't appreciate me. Still playing it safe, following the expected path, never reaching for what I actually wanted. The revenge I'd taken, exposing him, prosecuting him, destroying his career, it hadn't been about making him suffer. It had been about refusing to be a victim, about standing up for myself in a way I'd never done before. And that act of standing up had changed everything. The new year arrived with celebration and possibility. Phoenix announced my promotion in a press release that went viral, the story of the woman who'd taken down her corrupt husband and then built a career that eclipsed his completely. Media outlets loved the narrative. I did interviews, photo shoots, keynote speeches. Some people praised me, called me a role model, a fighter, an inspiration. Others criticized me, said I was vindictive, that I'd destroyed a man's life over a personal grudge, that I was proof women couldn't separate business from emotion. I didn't care about the critics anymore. I'd learned that you couldn't please everyone, and trying would only exhaust you. The people who mattered, the women I was helping, the companies I was investing in, the partners who trusted me, they knew the truth. Jordan was released from prison in February. He'd served 2 years of his sentence with good behavior, and now he was out, trying to rebuild his life. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to Denver, was working at a small consulting firm, living in a studio apartment. Part of me wondered if he was happy, if he'd learned anything from his time in prison, from losing everything he'd had. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. He was the past. I was focused on the future. In March, Nathan proposed. We were on vacation in Hawaii, watching the sunset from our hotel balcony. He got down on one knee with a ring he'd designed himself, simple, elegant, perfect. "Victoria Nash," he said. "You're the strongest, smartest, most incredible woman I've ever met. You've taught me what real resilience looks like, what it means to fight for yourself and your dreams. I want to spend the rest of my life supporting you, loving you, building a future together. Will you marry me?" I looked at this man who'd been patient with my healing, who'd celebrated my successes, who'd never made me feel like I had to choose between love and ambition. And I knew my answer. Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. We got married in September, 3 years after that terrible night at the gala. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends, held in Diane's backyard under strings of lights. No grand speeches, no elaborate production. Just two people who'd both been through hell, promising to face whatever came next together, Diane cried. Antonio told terrible jokes. My mother told everyone she'd always known I'd end up happy. Patricia gave a toast about resilience and second chances that had half the guests in tears. It was perfect, simple and honest and real. That night, Nathan and I stood on Diane's porch after everyone had left, holding hands, looking at stars barely visible through city light pollution. Do you ever think about him? Nathan asked. About Jordan? About what happened? Sometimes, I admitted. Not often, but sometimes I wonder if he's okay, if he learned anything, if he regrets what he did. Do you regret how you handled it? I thought about that. About the board meeting, the trial, the very public destruction of Jordan's career and reputation. Had I been too harsh? Too vindictive? Should I have handled it privately, quietly, like everyone expected? No, I said finally. I don't regret it. What Jordan did wasn't just personal, it was criminal. He stole from the company, lied to everyone, planned to abandon me and take my money. He deserved consequences. And more than that, other women deserve to see that they don't have to stay silent when they're betrayed. You became a symbol, Nathan said. For a lot of women, you're proof that you can fight back and win. I hope so. I hope I showed that it's okay to demand justice, to refuse to be a victim, to burn everything down and rebuild on your own terms. I leaned into him. But mostly, I hope I showed myself that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, that I can survive anything and come out better on the other side. We stood there in comfortable silence, and I thought about the journey I'd taken. From that devastating night at the gala to this moment, married to a man who loved me, running a company I believed in, living a life that was entirely my own creation. The revenge I'd taken on Jordan, it had been necessary, justified, empowering. But the real revenge was this: being happy, being successful, being free. Living well, as they say, is the best revenge of all. 5 years later, I sat in my corner office at Phoenix Capital, looking out at the city that had witnessed my destruction and my resurrection. The company had grown beyond anything Patricia or I had imagined. We now had offices in 12 cities across 3 continents. We'd invested in over 200 companies, 90% of them led by women. Our portfolio companies had created thousands of jobs, generated billions in revenue, changed entire industries. I'd made Forbes' list of the world's most powerful women. I'd been invited to speak at the UN. I'd advised governments, mentored hundreds of founders, helped rewrite the rules about who deserved investment and why. But the accomplishment I was proudest of wasn't any of those things. It was simpler, quieter, more personal. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply, contentedly happy. Nathan and I had 2 children now, a daughter named Hope and a son named Phoenix, both named after the life I'd built from ashes. We had a house in the suburbs with a big backyard, a dog named Charlie, family dinners where we laughed too loud and argued about whose turn it was to do dishes. I still worked hard, still traveled constantly, still pushed myself to accomplish more. But now work was one part of my life, not my entire life. I had balance, boundaries, joy. Diane often joked that I'd become unrecognizable from the woman I'd been in my first marriage. You actually smile now, she'd say, like all the time. It's weird. She was right. I did smile more, because I learned something crucial through everything I'd survived. You can't build happiness on a foundation of lies. You can't love someone who doesn't respect you. You can't succeed by playing small and safe and acceptable. Sometimes I still thought about Jordan, wondered if he'd rebuilt his life, if he'd learned anything, if he ever regretted what he'd thrown away. I'd heard he'd remarried, had a baby, was working his way back up in his career. Part of me hoped he was happy. Part of me didn't care. He wasn't part of my story anymore. He was just a chapter I'd closed, a lesson I'd learned, a version of myself I'd outgrown. The revenge I'd taken public, calculated, devastating it, had been exactly what I needed at the time. It had given me back my power, my voice, my sense of justice. But the truest revenge hadn't been destroying him. It had been building something so beautiful, so successful, so entirely mine that his betrayal became just a footnote in a much larger story. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Dinner at 7? I'm making your favorite." I smiled and typed back, "Perfect, love you." Outside my office window, the city glittered in afternoon light. Somewhere out there, women were building companies, dreaming big dreams, refusing to accept limitations placed on them by a world that still underestimated them. And I was here, ready to invest in their futures, ready to prove again that women were worth the bet, ready to help them write their own stories of revenge, resilience, and rebirth. Because that's what Phoenix Capital was about. Not just venture capital, not just returns on investment. It was about transformation, about rising from ashes, about showing the world that you could be knocked down and still come back stronger. I'd lived that story myself. Now I was helping others live theirs. And that was the best revenge of all.